It is hard to know where to begin. We breathed a tentative sigh of relief as Shabbat began last week, knowing that Israel had negotiated a ceasefire with Hamas after 2 weeks of devastating rockets that terrorized Israelis from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv and from Sderot to Hadera. We took a deep breath, wondering if the fragile truce with the terrorist organization that rules over nearly 2 million Palestinian men, women, and children, whose lives mean less to Hamas than their hatred of Jews and Israel, would last. We rallied in solidarity with our homeland, defended her right to defend herself, and prayed for peace for our sake. Yes, and even for the sake of the lives of those whose leaders seek our destruction. We thought the worst was, for the time being, behind us. And then, one by one, reports began to stream in, not from halfway around the world, but from halfway around the country. Jews viciously and violently attacked in Los Angeles while dining out at a restaurant. A pro-Palestinian activist at a rally in our nation's capital comparing Zionists to ISIS. A Jewish man beaten with a crutch out in the open in the most public of places in New York City in Times Square. Synagogues vandalized, men wearing kippot targeted and harassed, Israelis and pro-Israel advocates being called perpetrators of crimes against humanity. Last week, it was Israel's safety that we feared for. This week, after reports of anti-Semitic activity in the United States increased by hundreds of percentage points, it's us. It's our safety and the safety of our communities that are the source of our fear. Last week, it was the continuation of U.S. aid to Israel that we lobbied for, to replenish the Iron Dome, to rebuild Israel's supply of precision rockets, the very rockets, by the way, that allow Israel to target Hamas operatives and lessen civilian casualties. Tools of war that are designed not to murder, but to defend and protect. But this week, it was more funding for security guards and increased police presence at our synagogues, our community centers, and our schools. Last week, for Israel's sake and for the sake of our brothers and sisters in Israel, it was anti-Zionism we were fighting. This week, for the sake of all Jews everywhere, it was anti-Semitism we were denouncing. There are arguments to be made, and otherwise rational people make them, that anti-Zionism is not always anti-Semitism, that one can be opposed to the existence of a Jewish state, or at least this particular version of the Jewish state on principle, while welcoming and accepting the positive role that Jews play in the world at large. And I'll let the pundits debate that. But after this week, what cannot be denied is that anti-Zionism leads to and inflames anti-Semitism. About that, there can no longer be any question, because we have dozens and dozens of examples from these past 2 weeks in our country, and dozens more from countries around the world to prove it. And while we have Hamas and its partners and enablers, the PLO, Hezbollah, Iran, to blame for what happened in Israel, the question of who to blame here at home and in the diaspora is somewhat more complex. Yes, thanks to the extraordinary efforts of law enforcement, the perpetrators of these evil acts will be found, and they will be prosecuted, and they will be punished. But listen to the language that they use when they curse and spit on and physically assault Jews, and you'll know that there are plenty of places to point fingers. Too many, in fact. Too many misguided, misinformed, and badly mistaken voices that claim to speak with a moral voice that they have not earned because they are dangerously ignorant. Too many who don't understand or can't understand that the megaphone that they are using to blast Israel with words like apartheid, genocide, and ethnic cleansing will echo in the ears of their millions of followers, thousands of whom are just waiting for any excuse, any provocation for any justification to attack Jews. They think that their words are a call to justice. They are not. For many, many people across the globe, they are a call to arms, a call to be vicious and violent, a call to actualize the hatred within them. And thank God, as far as we know, here at home, that has not cost us any lives this week. And thank God, this week, at least, we have seen a response that should give us some hope, some assurance that for now, there are many, many more out there in this country who seek to protect us than seek to cause us harm. Many, many more, who even if they don't fully comprehend what is at stake for us in the Middle East, can understand what it is like to be targeted in your own backyard. On Thursday, I, along with I hope many of you, attended a virtual rally organized by the ADL, WZO, Hadassah, and Federation in conjunction with every major Jewish denomination to call Americans to action to fight anti-Semitism. This list of speakers was diverse and it was impressive. Rabbis, cardinals, imams, pastors, sports celebrities, politicians from across the country and across the political divide. Among them, the Speaker of the House Majority Leader, the House Minority Leader, the Senate Majority Leader, and the Senate Minority Leader, and a representative of the Biden administration. Each of them spoke out to condemn hatred against Jews and to support the steps necessary to protect our people from harm. And just as important was representation from diverse communities across America who insisted that if you are Black, if you are Asian, if you are Latino, if you are a member of a demographic group who has been targeted by acts of hatred in this country, you cannot stand idly by while Jews are being targeted. We would be wise to take these individuals and the groups they represent at their word, to believe that their sentiments and their concern is genuine, even though I know that for some of us, depending on our particular set of beliefs, that is difficult. But if we do not take them seriously, not only do we risk losing their support, we risk losing the right to hold them accountable if and when they and the people they lead fail to keep their promises to us and to Israel. Now is the time to redouble our efforts to build alliances and to seek common ground. Now that we have people's attention, now that the sickening images of Jews being bullied and harassed and beaten have now been seen on every major news network and news website, we need to keep the pressure up. Now is also not the time to give in to our cynicism, our fears about the future, or the doomsday prognostications about what might happen next. Israel has shown that she can defend herself, that she can make friends out of old enemies, and that she can even withstand years of seemingly interminable political gridlock and chaos to unite as one nation when lives were at stake. We Jews here in America therefore must try and do the same, for Israel's sake and for our sake. And finally, we must regain the upper hand and the moral high ground in our defense of Israel in the public sphere, in the halls of government, and on social media. We must become fluent, if we are not already, on what apartheid is and what it isn't, on what the difference is between ethnic cleansing and ethnic conflict, on who on the world stage is guilty of egregious human rights violations, of mass imprisonment, of mass murder, and who is simply, imperfectly perhaps at times, trying to protect their own people from harm. Thus far, the results of our political advocacy, our efforts to push the levers of power to build a strong relationship between the United States and the State of Israel, has been a resounding success. There are still scores of politicians on both sides of the aisle who have voted time and time again to support Israel, who have gone with AIPAC on missions to Israel, who have not been bullied or beaten into submission by the extremists and the conspiracy theorists to their extreme left and right. But in the effort to outsmart and outmaneuver the clueless celebrities and the ignorant political activists and pundits, we have come up short. And truth be told, it is not exactly a fair fight. Bella Hadid, whose name unfortunately you now have to recognize, has 1.4 million followers on Twitter and 43 million followers on Instagram. When she posted that Palestine must be freed from the river to the sea, effectively erasing the State of Israel in one breath, she was called out by the official Twitter account of the State of Israel. That's where the fight is these days, my friends. They know it, and so should we. Whether we wanted to or not, we have all learned to use Facebook over this past year and a half. After Shabbat, go to actagainstantisemitism.org and download their social media toolkit. They've done some of the work for you. All you have to do now is figure out how to cut and paste. 2 weeks ago, I reminded everyone how significant it was that once again, after 14 months, we will be removing the Torah for the Aron Kodesh and bringing it around the sanctuary to each one of you. I invoked the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. It was Erev Shavuot, after all, an experience described in the Midrash as both communal and individual, one in which each Israelite was afforded the opportunity to hear God's words in their own unique way. But there is another image that we evoke when we remove the Torah from the ark, one that's referenced in this week's parsha. Vayehi binsoa ha'aron vayomer Moshe, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu misanecha mipanecha. When in the wilderness of Sinai, Aaron would bring forth the Ark of the Covenant and parade it around in front of the people, Moses would cry out, "Rise up, O God, and may those that desecrate your name be scattered before you." The implication is clear. When we carry our Torah with us, our people's history, our pursuit of justice, and our dedication to our way of life and to our holy land, when we allow these sacred commitments to light our way, God is with us, and we are with each other, shielding us from harm and banishing those who seek our destruction. Uvnucho Yomar. And when the ark was restored to its place in the tabernacle, Moses would say, "Return, O God, you whose divinity has spread forth over thousands of thousands." May our Ahavat Medinat Yisrael and Ahavat Am Yisrael, our love for the land of Israel and for the people of Israel everywhere, inspire us to spread our message of peace and justice and righteousness to the thousands upon thousands whose minds and hearts have yet to be won. Whose minds and hearts have yet to be won in the battle for our safety, our security, and the well-being of our fellow Jews here at home and in our homeland, speedily in our day. And let us all say, Amen. Baruch Tiyah. We continue now with a Chatzi Kaddish before Musa.